at the Jomo Kenyatta International Airport and what effect it has had on tourism and what the government is doing to alleviate the situation. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Senator Bugwa. Senator Cheptumo.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, in Baringo County, there is a game reserve called Lake Kapnorok Game Reserve. And there has been serious conflict between the residents of that area and the wildlife in that particular game reserve. And I wanted to know from the minister, sometimes some of the game reserves, Mr. Speaker, provides pasture for livestock within those areas. And sometimes because of the conflict between the wildlife and the residents, there is a lot of inhuman harassment of the residents of that area. Mr. Speaker, I want to know from the minister if it is possible for his ministry to have MOUs, Memorandum of Understanding between the game reserve management and the people, so that during dry season, Mr. Speaker, then the people are allowed to graze in the game reserves. Because, Mr. Speaker, the game reserves really is a resource within our communities. And I think the conflict should be managed in a manner that there should be some understanding, so that the locals can be allowed to graze, and with understanding that that is an important resource for them. Is the ministry able to engage communities under MOUs and allow people to graze in the game reserves with understanding?
And lastly, Senator Tobiko.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I'm glad to hear that the ministry is now going to do dams and water pans at the park areas, because really this has been the biggest contributing factor of the human-wildlife conflict, as the wildlife get out of the parks to get water from private water pans, Mr. Speaker, and communal water pans. And so I believe with a lot of water pans and dams done at the park areas, that will then lessen the human-wildlife conflict in our areas, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, because we have areas where the human-wildlife conflict is really a major issue, has stopped children from going to schools. In our county around Kiboko area, Poka Kenyawa ward, Mr. Speaker, it's a big issue, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the second thing is about the snakes, Mr. Speaker. I know we are not allowed to kill the snakes. But even if there was compensation, which there isn't, on snake bites, Mr. Speaker, it's natural. When you see a snake, the next thing you imagine is that it will bite and kill, Mr. Speaker. And so I just want the minister to note that the truth is that we are killing snakes, because we come from places where the pufferdas, the black mambas are all over, Mr. Speaker. And it's a natural instinct from human beings. You see a snake and you kill. In fact, I am ready to offer those who harvest, the poison from the snakes. I'm ready to offer them a place in my home to camp, so that they can get the snakes and get, the poison thing, the one they use to go and make, the antivenom, Mr. Speaker. Because this is a daily occurrence in our places. The pufferdas are so many. The black mambas are so many. And then my last contribution, Mr. Speaker.
Actually, Senator Tobiko.
Yes.
I had given you an opportunity to ask the Cabinet Secretary a question, but I've noticed you have commented.
Allow me to do the last, Mr. Speaker.
Because of your comments, you have confessed to the killing of snakes. on a daily basis. Kindly close on your comments so that the CS
Okay,
can
let me close this way, Mr. Speaker. I have been wondering why KWS does not take time to do an awareness creation campaign within the communities that live with wildlife, so that when I see a black mamba, I know how to behave. And when someone sees an elephant, they know how to behave. When they see a hyena, they know how to behave. Because sometimes people kill these animals because you do not know how to escape from them. You do not know that this one may be harmless. Mr. Speaker, I'm sure if KWS was to do an awareness creation campaign within the communities, or even be teaching the children in schools on the various behaviors of animals and how they should be handled, I'm sure still we will be able to reduce the human-wildlife conflict. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable CS, before you respond, I have a communication to make. Honorable Senators, in the public gallery, we have 45 students accompanied by 4 teachers from Riara International School in Nairobi City, County, who are on an education visit to the Senate. Honorable Senators, in our usual tradition of receiving and welcoming visitors to Parliament, I extend a warm welcome to them, and on behalf of the Senate and on my own behalf, wish them a fruitful visit. I thank you. I will ask Senator Boni Halwale to welcome them in the Senate. Under 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the privilege to acknowledge our children. Mr. Speaker, Riara schools have made a very big contribution to the education of this nation. I therefore wish to welcome the young people plus their teachers and assure them that as we sit down here in the chamber, their round faces reminds us God's message that the world will never come to an end. In the coming days, some of them will be in this house, in the other house, in our county assemblies. There'll be doctors like me, there'll be lawyers like you, there'll be teachers like many, and so on and so forth. We wish you well, and all the children of Kenya who are now sitting exams, we wish you good luck. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Senator Boni. Honorable CS, you may respond now to that last batch of questions from the honorable members.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I also want to acknowledge the students who are here from Riara. I think it's a very good, I remember my days as a student visiting different areas where we got a lot of interest and we learned quite a few things. Nianza na swali la Mheshimiwa Danson Mungatana kutoka kwa ndugu zetu wa Tana River kuhusu shida ambayo imetokea kule kwa sababu ya upungufu wa wasimamizi wa wanyamapori. Napenda kuambia kwamba shida ambayo tumekuwa nayo ni upungufu wa watu wa kutosha. Hivi sasa rais wetu ametupa ruhusa ya kuweza kuajiri zaidi ya karibu 1,500 wapya kwa wasimamizi. Kwa hivyo tutaanza kuajiri hivi karibuni, tutatangaza, wengi tutatoa kule kwa National Youth Service ndio waweze kuwa ukiitana wako hapo wanaweza kuhudumia kwa njia ambayo inafaa, na tukipata hela zaidi tutaweza kuongeza wengine. Nipenda pia kuarifu ya kwamba katika mna shida tofauti katika upande wa Tana River kwa sababu ya ule uhusiano ama kuishi karibu na wanyama, na pia katika zile shida ambazo zimewakumba, na sio mamba peke yake, ni wengi. Lakini tayari tumelipa katika muhula ambao umepita huu ambao unaendelea, tumelipa shilingi milioni 77 kwa wale ambao wameathiriwa katika county ya Tana River. Moving on to the second question about harassment of tourists and visitors at Jomo Kenyatta International Airport. It is a real concern that I've spoken about. I'd like to inform this House that former Senator, the Minister for Roads and Transport, held a very important meeting with his team, and he has initiated procedures and changes that will be undertaken to make sure that the airport is operating properly in many ways, from its physical perspective to the way the operations run, to the way visitors are received. We're working closely together as one team of government and the Kenya Kwanza government, and we are going to ensure that this does not happen. Yes, definitely, when people feel harassed, there's a problem. I was telling the members, I was telling the Commissioner General of KRA that you always have to look at the bigger picture. That most of us, when you're growing up, were given the duty of running after chicken. So we could catch the chicken whenever we had a visitor, so the chicken could be slaughtered. And you could run all over and try to catch the chicken. But at times we saw what our fathers did. Instead of running after the chicken, they just use maize. And they would drop, one seed of maize, you can call it a seed of maize, and the chicken would bite it, another one, and you get close, and they catch, and they're able to get hold of the chicken. You don't calculate the cost of the chicken, because the cost of the maize, because if you concentrate on the small pieces of, maize comb, you lose the bigger chicken. So we're trying to tell them that, yes, at times you may want people to be charged for this and this, but let's look at the bigger picture. Furthermore, I realize that they have been harassing people who don't need to be harassed. For example, you carry your phone. I was there just the other day. I was visiting, I was traveling, and I saw them stop a lady who just had her 2 old phones in her bag, and they made her open her bag. What's the deal about having 2 or 3 phones? You aren't allowed to have 2 or 3 phones? And it's different. If you're carrying a package of phones to sell, you need to pay duty. You're carrying your own individual phones, and they can tell they're not in a package. Why do you even need to stop the person to verify that? So there's a lot of education that needs to go to our people that we're working together to be able to raise enough system. But work is being implemented, and the future is bright. About the question, very good question about Baringo. It's good to note that we can't just allow domestic animals to go and graze in game reserves. That's where they're set as game reserves. You know, there's that challenge where people need to go and get fodder and all that. And we've entered into agreement with several counties. We've entered into agreement with Mbere, with Shimba, Mbere, Conservancy, Shimba Hills Conservancy, and South Kitui Conservancy about how to do some of these things. But there's also the danger of diseases. As you know, Kenya wants to place itself as a big marketer of beef to the world. And if you start mixing animals for livestock with wild animals, there's a danger of transfer of diseases. And therefore, we can get to a place where all exports from Kenya are banned. And so we lose money. So it's also important. Also, diseases can be transferred to animals, and we eat those animals, and we fall sick, and we die. So it's very important to keep the wild animals separated from the domestic animals, the livestock animals. But we can look at entering into an agreement with the game reserve in Baringo, and also to let the member of Senate know that this year we've paid 40 million to the people in terms of compensation to the people of Baringo. And lastly, Mr. Speaker, the very good question from Senator Tubiko from Jirani Mwema from Kajiado is that, and it's good to say we had a senator here who spoke on behalf of the monkeys. It's good to see another senator speaking on behalf of the snakes. And it is true, education and awareness are key. Many people don't know how to identify animals and identify dangerous and non-dangerous snakes and how to deal with them. It's good to note that only 33% of snakes in Kenya are poisonous. 66% are not poisonous. Unfortunately, they don't have a uniform like the students of Riara, where you can tell these ones are from here or these ones are from here, which are poisonous, which are not poisonous. But we can educate people on how to keep away from the snakes. For example, people need to know that when you have chicken in your household, you're inviting snakes to come to your household. You're more in danger of getting snakes to your household when you have chicken around, because they come for the eggs, they come for the chicks. Put the chicken away from the household. That you can also put water buckets and dig, make some water areas for the snakes away from your home. So snakes zinapindukia huko, zinakunywa maji, zinaenda mbali. By also looking at the gala where you put your maize and ensuring that it is airy and you don't have rats, because they come for the rats and then they meet you on the way and then they bite you. So it's about awareness, and we are going to do it much better. I think it's a very good idea that work on that. About the antivenom, I had said earlier on that we are about to start manufacturing a process to end up manufacturing antivenom, snake antivenom in our country. So it doesn't have to come from far, but even in the meantime, I'm going to get snake antivenom everywhere. So even as we manufacture snake antivenom, we welcome your offer for us to come to your farm and milk the snakes and have that as part of research process. And also, just to let you know, and to let the member of the public know, Mr. Speaker, with the indulgence, is that wild animals are called animals because they are wild. You can't reason with them. You can't tame them. You can't tame a lion. And that elephants are dangerous animals and they are very fast. A normal human being, myself here and Senator Mungatana, who looks active, when we are running, I think the top speed we can make is 25 kilometers per hour. And that's time we are sweating like crazy. An elephant, when it's just jogging, will do 28, 30 kilometers per hour, 35 kilometers per hour. You cannot outrun an elephant. Even if you are far, it will catch up to you. And so we need to tell people how to keep away. If you see it flapping its ears, you know that's a danger. You keep away. You can't outrun an elephant. You may be far, but it will catch up with you very, very fast. So it's about being able to let wananchi know and being able to have a good program, and we're going to do something that is going to be effective using the media, local media, and also community education for people to know how to live with or near wild animals. Mr. Speaker, I thank you for this opportunity and this session. And as we continue promoting our country, we have to be able to protect our wildlife. As you know, we are getting new visitors coming. I'm leaving here to rush to Nairobi National Park. The president of Romania is visiting. He's currently exploring the park. I want to be able to show him a few things as the interest in Kenya grows. Our president, William Ruto, has been able to arouse interest in our country, and we should see an influx of many people coming to our country. Kenya is being spoken about everywhere. I witnessed this in New York when I went to sessions in the United Nations, whereby once you get in and you raise your hand, they skip many other people to let Kenya speak first. Kenya is now an anchor nation in terms of how we have been looked at in the foreign world, and we should expect very many visitors to come to this country for tourism, for conferences and others, and it is our job to ensure they are comfortable and they're here so they can leave their money behind, so we can create employment for our kids. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. Thank you, honorable members.
Thank you, honorable CS. I will ask Senator Chimera to be the first person to ask you questions next time you appear, because he had a question. He came in when I had already exercised the discretion to close on the question time. I want to appreciate honorable CS, together with your team, Madam Sylvia, PS, and the rest of the team that supports you, for taking time to come in and respond to the questions in this honorable house. I'm very sure your involvement in answering these questions is giving us the comfort and the assurance as to the role your ministry is playing, and you will take into consideration a number of the proposals and comments made by members in furtherance of your work in the ministry. I would like to appreciate you once again and wish you and your team a very good day, and you stand released from the Senate. Thank you very much. Honorable members, we had two other CSs who were meant to be here today. We had the Honorable CS for Foreign Affairs and Treasury. We have received a communication from him that he, on official duty, has traveled outside the country and has excused himself. So question number 18 will be deferred, courtesy of a letter that came from the office of the CS. Secondly, the CS for Transport and Roads is to be here in a little while. He had a conversation with the chair and requested that he will join us in due course. So for purposes of us progressing, we will, in the meantime, deal with the next issues in the order paper as we await. Should they come in good time, should he appear in good time, we will proceed to deal with the questions that were scheduled for the ministry. And honorable members, earlier on, Senator Chute had taken us through the, had moved the motion on the extension of time. So I would like us to revert to that bit so that we progress on that. Senator Chute. Clerk, call the next order.
Order number 9, motion, extension of the mandate of the ad hoc committee on the compensation to the Kenya victims of the 1998 bombing of the United States of America Embassy in Nairobi.
Senator Halwale, what is your point of order?
Sorry, Mr. Speaker, just some clarity on where we are going. Mr. Speaker, there were a number of ministers who were listed to appear before us. Amongst them, Mr. Yes? Mr. Speaker, amongst them, the minister, the cabinet secretary of roads, transport and infrastructure, who had a question number 65 on the fate of the presidential directive on upgrading of Kakamega airstrip to an international status. So, Speaker, we wanted you to guide us about that and other ministers who are involved so that we know. Yes.
I will, and I'm afraid, Senator Boni, you probably was not concentrating on the directive from the chair. I have indicated that the Honorable CS for Treasury and Foreign Affairs has written a letter which has been accepted to the House that he's asking to have his question deferred because he's on official duties outside the country. He therefore could not attend today. That I did say. Secondly, as regards the Honorable CS for Roads and Transport, there are actually more than 4 questions. There is question number 30, there is question number 47, question number 48, question number 56, question number 60, and question number 65. All these are directed to the CS for Roads and Transport. Communication which has been received is that he's traveling from Mombasa to attend to these questions. So we will, Honorable Cherargei, the chair is speaking. You can't interrupt the chair as he's giving his address. And I thought you are a ranking member to this, so you should be able to understand at what point do you bring in your point of order. I will give you the opportunity. So, Senator Boni, that one is the direction that we will give. We will have the CS for Transport to respond to these questions. The communication we have received is that he is on his way to join the House and respond to those questions. Senator Cherargei, what was your point of order?
Mr. Speaker, on a matter of procedure, I think this House had made a ruling that we can only wait for a minister or they can fail to attend a House on 2 occasions only. When they're attending parliamentary committee or parliament or when they're in cabinet. Mr. Speaker, could you clarify to this House which procedure would force the House to adjourn and re-adjourn to wait for a cabinet minister who was well versed that he should have appeared today at as from 9:30, looking at many issues, Mr. Speaker, sir, so that we don't build a tradition where in future if a cabinet minister feels that they don't want to come at 10, they will come at 12, and imagine that the House will freeze or proceed with other House business so that they can come. I think the neater way should have, even if they are busy, the neater way should have been to reschedule to a later date. Instead, because now, Speaker, unless you are making a different ruling that in future, if I'm a witness before the Parliament, and I'm given a time to appear at 9, and I got get up or some of the reasons, I just decide to defer at 3 p.m. and tell the House that I will arrive at 3. So, Mr. Speaker, can you clarify so that in future, we don't open a window? You know, this is a house of rules and traditions, and then we don't want, when we summon or invite a witness before the House, they can go to court and challenge and say at one point the cabinet CS was supposed to appear, but because he was traveling, the House decided to defer the matter until an hour or 2 hours later. So we need to be very clear so that we don't open a very dangerous window that will abuse the parliamentary privilege and the position of parliament, because we have agreed there are only two situations that you can avoid sitting, cabinet meetings and appearing before parliament. Can you clarify so that we don't risk other issues that might crop up in future? I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Proceed, Senator Mungatana.
Mr. Speaker, in addition to what my colleagues have said, I just wanted, Mr. Speaker, to say that it's important for cabinet secretaries to honor the summonses here. In particular, I was personally waiting for CS Murkomen because we have a national embarrassment at the airport where rain is falling. Rain is falling inside the international airport, Mr. Speaker, and it would have been an important position for him to clarify what is going on, because what the newspapers have reported, they are saying that he is talking about Jubilee administration. Mr. Speaker, how can we be talking about Jubilee administration 1 year down the road? We wanted the minister to come and clarify, and this is an important podium for him. Isn't that more important than traveling, Mr. Speaker, traveling to wherever? Mr. Speaker, I think you should be very firm about these ministers. We want them to honor the time that is in this house, Mr. Speaker, especially when important things that are embarrassing the nation. Mr. Speaker, imagine I'm being called by, a relative, my brother who is living outside, to tell me what is happening in Kenya. You can't even fix your airports. What's happening? Mr. Speaker, it's a national embarrassment, and the minister should have been here to clarify what he's going to do about it. I thank you, Mr. Minister.
Thank you, Senator Cherargei. Thank you, Senator Mungatana. In fact, the more reason as to why the Honorable CS, I believe, was accommodated to come at around 11 is because of what you've just raised. As to the decision that this House took previously, that is the decision. It can only be at the point where the SBC has agreed to adjourn or to defer a question. Otherwise, all cabinet secretaries who are required to respond to questions are supposed to appear, unless otherwise it has been accepted by the SBC. In this case, we only had received this communication from the CS for Treasury as to his official engagement outside. These are the assignment on other ministers who are meant to appear, including the CS for Roads, was to appear at 11 because SBC indeed said he must appear. But for what Honorable Mungatana has raised, he was engaged in that particular assignment, so that is the reason of his delay. There isn't any other reason as to why that has been accepted by the chair. Yes, Senator Bonnie.
Mr. Speaker, sorry if I'm seen to be slowing the House, but I find it difficult to understand. Probably the clerks can guide us. Under what standing order do we wait for a minister? Mr. Speaker, we've been around for a while. We've never seen a situation whereby business of the House is being stood down so as to wait for a minister. And even if we are going to do it, Mr. Speaker, could you tell us, are we suspending the House?
Senator Bonnie, I had already indicated that we are calling the next order to deal with the motion for purposes of making sure that the business of the House is not suspended. Senator Cherargei.
Mr. Speaker, I want to repeat what my colleagues have said. With all tremendous respect, I know you have power to rearrange the order papers by the standing orders. But how do we look before Kenyans if we can wait for a cabinet secretary? It is not, Mr. Speaker, can you rule that the CS should appear in next possible sitting so that we can proceed with other matters, Mr. Speaker? Because it's unmatched. I am not aware, you are talking about the issue of leaking roof in JKI, the issue of roads that have been swept away by floods. You know, these are issues that we needed the Cabinet Secretary Murkomen to come and clarify on what the ministry is putting interventions of floodings in the country. So, Mr. Speaker, what we are arguing is just for neatness of the House. Since now you have rearranged the order paper, which you have powers to as per the standing order, can you direct that? Because if Senate becomes the first Parliament, in fact, Parliament does not even wait for a president. If we wait for a cabinet minister by the name Murkomen, it will be a national embarrassment plus what is happening in JKI of leaking terminal roofs, Mr. Speaker. So what I request with out of respect, and I know you are a gentleman, you are a good man, allow the House to proceed, advise the SBC, because you are a learned senior counsel, advise the ISPC that out of the neatness and respect and tradition of this House, let the minister be allowed to appear at a later date. It will be neater. Then we proceed with other matters. There is extension of ad hoc committee, Mr. Speaker, ad hoc committee by Senator Chute. There is the issue of debate of presidential State of the Nation address, SONA, to be addressed, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, finally, I want to repeat what I have said. There are only 2 instances that you can fail to appear before Parliament. When you are only attending a cabinet meeting, Mr. Speaker. We shall not allow the CS Murkomen to take this House for granted. He was here. He knows the value of Parliament, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we have received so many complaints. Even Chute will tell you in Marsabit, Mogadishu roads in northern Kenya, the roads have been swept away, Mr. Speaker, by floods. So, Mr. Speaker, can you rule that we allow the CS to go and see those roads and leaking in roofs in JKI, then we give him a later day next week, then we proceed with the matters of the House. Considering, Mr. Speaker, our agenda is heavy. Mr. Speaker, please properly guide the House for the benefit of all of us, Mr. Speaker, and so that at least some of us can move with other issues that is on the order paper.
Senator Cherargei, Senator Boni, you are aware that under Standing Order 45-2, the chair has got the mandate to reorganize the order paper and the business of the House for the convenience of the Senate. And it is on this provision of this standing order that we made those rearrangements. But in view of what you have said, I will, as I've already stated, direct that Senator Chute proceeds with this motion, and for the neatness of the House, make relevant directives as regards the appearances of the cabinet secretaries before the House. Senator Chute, proceed to prosecute your motion. Senator Chute, proceed to prosecute your motion on the extension of time for the compensation of the Kenya victims of the 1998 bombing of the United States of America Embassy.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I beg to move this motion today on the extension of the mandate of the ad hoc committee on the compensation to the Kenya victims of the 1998 bombing of the United States of America Embassy in Nairobi on behalf of the chairperson. Mr. Speaker, that aware that at the sitting of the Senate held on Thursday, 27th June 2023, the Senate resolved to establish an ad hoc committee to investigate the compensation to the Kenyan victims of 1998 bombing of the United States of America Embassy in Nairobi and report back to the House within 3 months of its establishment. Mr. Speaker, realizing that the extension period of 45 days of the tenure of the ad hoc committee lapsed on 10th November 2023, yet the committee has a lot of work to execute to conclude in conducting the inquiry. Mr. Speaker, now, therefore, the Senate resolves to renew the mandate of the ad hoc committee for a further period of 100 days from 10th November 2023 to enable the committee to finalize and table its report in the Senate on or before 18th February 2024. Mr. Speaker, sir,
As you are aware, since its establishment, the committee has carried out various activities pertaining to its mandate. As a snapshot, the committee has held a number of meetings in which it transacted the following key businesses. A, Mr. Speaker, consideration of preliminary report from the law firm in the US that has been litigating on the compensation of the victims by the USA government. B, meeting with the victims of bomb blast tragedy and their representatives. C, Mr. Speaker, attended the bomb blast victim prayer day held on Saturday, 5th August 2023, and attended the 25th commemoration of the bomb blast held on 7th August 2023. E, conducted a public hearing. F, meeting with the advocates who have represented the bomb blast all through. Meeting with the National Council for Persons with Disability. H, meeting with the Ministry of Health. I, meeting with the Ministry of Labor and Social Protection. J, meeting with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Diaspora Affairs. K, meeting with the Ministry of Interior and National Administration. Mr. Speaker, all the above-mentioned activities have been crucial for the committee as they have provided invaluable insights that will enable the committee to fulfill its mandate.
I hope you're closing because it's just a procedural motion, Senator Chute.
Sorry.
I don't think it will have a lot of issues that would warrant you to run us through all that.
Say that again.
I'm saying this is a mere procedural motion which you just can read it out, get somebody to second so that we progress, because I believe this House will not have much of an issue as regards extension of time.
Thank you very much. Let me, in conclusion, Mr. Speaker, let me say, before inviting someone to second, it has been 25 years, Mr. Speaker. The victims are waiting for compensation, and we've done a lot. We've, in fact, met with the Prime Cabinet Secretary about 3 weeks ago. We are intending to meet with the embassy, American embassy, anytime very soon. We are also intending very soon to visit the United States of America to convince or lobby for the Senate in America to pass a law for the compensation of the 1998 victims. We are seeking 100 days more time, and I now ask Senator Cheptumo to second this motion. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I will be brief. Mr. Speaker, I serve in this committee also as a member with my neighbor here. Mr. Speaker, there is indeed compelling reasons and justification for this motion of extension of time. Mr. Speaker, as happily prosecuted by the mover, several Kenyans, Mr. Speaker, as you are aware, suffered a great deal during the bomb blast in 1998. Several Kenyans died, and many of them, Mr. Speaker, were maimed. And 25 years down the line, Mr. Speaker, they have not been compensated. Mr. Speaker, it should be known that the suffering Kenyans are going through for that period of time arose out of a bombing by terrorists, not because they were fighting the Kenyan population or the Kenyan government, but it was an incident arising, targeting the United States of America embassy, Mr. Speaker. So these Kenyans suffered because of a situation that was existing between the terrorists and the American government. And so, Mr. Speaker, and for 25 years, really, there has been no attention given to these Kenyans. Mr. Speaker, this House, therefore, should be recognized and appreciated, Mr. Speaker, because for the first time, this House now has taken the step to seek compensation. And Mr. Speaker, I can assure you as a member of this committee that, as said by my colleague here, we've had meetings with many stakeholders. But Mr. Speaker, I want to escalate this conversation to the United States of America, to engage the Senate and other stakeholders, the Embassy of the United States of America in Kenya, so that, Mr. Speaker, then we move to the final stage of this process. If we can only do it, Mr. Speaker, if we are given time. So I want to support and request the House, Mr. Speaker, to approve this request so that, Mr. Speaker, the committee, therefore, will finalize. Within 45 days, we are able to conclude and report back to the House. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I support. 100 days, Mr. Speaker, sorry.
Honorable Senators, I propose the question that aware at the sitting of the Senate held on Thursday, 27th June 2023, the Senate resolves to establish an ad hoc committee to investigate the compensation to the Kenyan victims of the 1998 bombing of the United States of America Embassy in Nairobi and report back to the House within 3 months of its establishment, realizing that the extension period of 45 days of the tenure of the ad hoc committee lapsed on 10th of November 2023, yet the committee has a lot of work to execute to conclude in conducting the inquiry. Now, therefore, the Senate resolves to renew the mandate of the ad hoc committee for a further period of 100 days from 10th November 2023 to enable the committee to finalize and table its report in the Senate on or before 18th February 2024. Now, Honorable Senators, I can see from the dashboard a good number of you seeking, I believe, to debate on this particular motion. And as I directed earlier on, the mover of the motion, this is just a procedural motion. I believe we will not take a lot of time to debate on this one, and we should be able to close on this in the shortest time possible. So I want to urge members, I will ask only 3 members to speak to this one so that we can move on to the next order paper. I believe Senator Mugatana.
Mr. Speaker, I will follow your guidance and be very brief. Mr. Speaker, I am grudgingly supporting the extension. I am grudgingly supporting because they have already come before this House for extension of their mandate before. And I've been listening carefully to the mover and the seconder to give us a reason, a solid reason why they need another extension of their mandate. And Mr. Speaker, I didn't hear any except that there is an unfinished work. But I would want to put my faith in the honorable gentlemen like Cheptumo, like Senator Chute, the leader of that team, Mama Agnes Kavindu. These are people that I believe are very honorable members who have distinguished themselves in various places we have worked with them. But with this caution, Mr. Speaker, that let them finish the work. Ad hoc committees are not supposed to stay in perpetuity. They should go, finalize the job, come back, give us a report, we finish with this matter. Because the same people who are waiting for that report, the same people they are fighting for are the same people who are going to tell them, you are taking too long, you're not doing anything, you are just like the other people. And then Senate will come under another fresh attack. So we are asking them that may this be the last extension. Let them not come back again. Let them just finish the work and give us a report. So because there are good men there, Mr. Speaker, I will support the motion, but grudgingly, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Joyce.
Yeah, thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. Allow me to really support my one and only EPO Chair, National Coalition, Mheshimiwa Chute. Honorable Speaker, I want to say that this ADO committee, I know, Honorable Speaker, I am one of the interested parties, and I have been following on a number of activities that they have been undertaking. This is one of the ad hoc that involves a number of stakeholders in terms of really finding out on how best they can address the issue of these victims, Honorable Speaker. So allow me, Honorable Speaker, to really agree with them in terms of extensions of time, because I have said it involves a number of ministries and even outside the country. And I want to say, Honorable Speaker, they have a goodwill of the leadership of this country. And that is why, Honorable Speaker, they have to do the due diligence in a number of activities that it is involved. And I would want to request, because this is just a procedural motion, Honorable Speaker, that we really support and give them time. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Beatrice Ogwela.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I rise to support this motion and to appeal to this Honorable House to grant the ad hoc committee the 100 days that have been requested for an extension. Honorable Speaker, I'm also a member of this committee, and we have been looking at the compensation on a number of issues on loss of lives. And Honorable Speaker, this is loss of life of over 200 Kenyans that lost their lives on that day. Honorable Speaker, in the committee, we have been meeting different Kenyans from all over the country. As you notice, Honorable Speaker, that this was an happening that was most unfortunate, that Kenyans lost their lives, a number of them in the course of their duties. A number of them are Kenyans who are just working in adjacent buildings to the American embassy. And a number of Kenyans, Honorable Speaker, were Kenyans that were going about their lives, their daily lives that were passing by the road. And this happened to happen as they were passing along the bomb blast site. Honorable Speaker, apart from the loss of over 200 people, we have been dealing with listening to over 5,000 Kenyans that had massive injuries. Mr. Speaker, sir, some of them are in so much deplorable situations. A number of them are blind. A number of them lost their limbs. A number of them suffer long-term medical conditions. And the reason why we have come to ask for an extension is that the attention of this committee has been so massive. Each time we are meeting the stakeholders, Honorable Speaker, it is so overwhelming because we have to listen to all of them. And Honorable Speaker, I think they deserve the listening from this committee of the Senate. Honorable Speaker, we have also been dealing with, apart from loss of life and the massive injuries that were caused, we are also looking at the compensation of loss of opportunities. In our sitting, Honorable Speaker, sometimes you have to listen to children that dropped out of school because their parents died out of this happening. And so, Honorable Speaker, we ask that the extension may be granted so that we give due diligence to Kenyans who need the attention of the committee. And Honorable Speaker, this bomb blast happening that we are dealing with is also going to set a precedent for other happenings that have occurred in this country. We had, after that, the Westgate, the Garissa technical school bombing, we have the Dusit, and Honorable Speaker, if this is handled well and within the time that we are asking for, this will also give a solution to some of those happenings that have had in this country. Honorable Speaker, we are yet also to exhaust our
Senator
meetings.
Beatrice, I had given directives earlier on that this is a procedural motion. Let's limit our arguments in support of the motion.
Thank you.
I want to ask you to end at that point so that we progress.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Honorable Speaker, I'm well guided, and so as I end, I want to support the motion and to appeal to the House to support the extension of the time. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you. Lastly, Senator John Kinyua.
Asante Bwana Spika. Kwanzia mwanzo nasema ya kwamba naunga mkono kuongeza muda wa kamati hii ya dharura kwa siku 100. Bwana Spika, nimeangalia na nikaona shughuli ambazo wamekuwa wakiziangazia Bwana Spika. Wamekutana Bwana Spika na Wizara ya Afya, Wizara ya Mambo ya Masuala ya Nje, na hata wamekutana na Wizara ya Mambo za Kindani Bwana Spika. Bwana Spika, lakini ni vizuri tuseme ya kwamba muda huu ambao wameuliza Bwana Spika, wautumie vizuri, wasije tena kuja hapa kusema wangetaka ongezewe siku Bwana Spika, kwa sababu mambo waliyofanya wamewafanya na zaidi ya siku 165 Bwana Spika. Bwana Spika, haya mambo machache ambayo yamebaki wanayotaka siku 100 Bwana Spika, najua inawezekana Bwana Spika, kwa sababu wanasema wanataka kukutana na mkuu wa sheria, wanataka kukutana Bwana Spika na balozi wa nchi ya Marekani Bwana Spika. Vile vile Bwana Spika, wanataka kutembelea nchi ya Amerika ndio waweze kwenda kukutana na seneti ya Amerika Bwana Spika. Kwa hivyo hizo siku 100 zitatosha Bwana Spika, ndio waweze kushughulikia Wakenya ambao waliadhiriwa, na vile vile wapate fidia wale ambao tayari walikufa, wale watu wanaotajwa zaidi ya watu 200 Bwana Spika. Kwa hivyo nataka kuwapongeza hii kamati kwa kazi nzuri wanayofanya, lakini Bwana Spika, wasiongeze siku kupita hizo siku 100 ambazo ameitisha, kwa sababu ni mambo machache sana yaliyobaki Bwana Spika, na hatutakataa kwa sababu Bwana Spika tayari wamemkula ng'ombe, iliyobaki ni mkia Bwana Spika. Kwa hivyo hizo siku 100 zitabaki, waweze kumaliza mkia na waweze kuleta ripoti na Wakenya wetu waweze kushughulikiwa. Bwana Spika, na kubali na naunga mkono. Asante Bwana Spika.
Thank you. Senator John Methu.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker, for giving me an opportunity to also grudgingly support the extension of time for this committee. And I'm not persuaded by the reasons that were given by Senator Mungatana, of course, because his own committee sought extension 4 times. During the Shakahola,
Senator Mungatana, what's your point of order?
Mr. Speaker, this is a house of record. I wanted the Honorable Senator Methu to actually be factual. We only sought extension once, not 4 times. If 4 times you would not have accepted, surely it's not possible. So just be focused.
Make sure your contributions are
okay, very well. Then he sought extension 1 time. So, Honorable Speaker, as I support, I actually have been following up on this particular matter that is being dealt by the Senator Agnes Kavindu-led committee, and I've seen the strides that they have made, and I actually feel that they require a little more time, and I hope, just as the Senator for Laikipia said, this shall be the last extension that they are seeking, so they can be able to fundraise on all the stakeholders that they require to look at, and also finalize on the report, so that as a House we can get a conclusive report. I support, Honorable Speaker.
Honorable Senators, that brings us to the end of the contributions by the members on this particular motion, and I make a determination that this is a matter that does not affect counties, and I now put the question that honorable senators are aware that the sitting of the Senate held on Thursday, 27th June 2023. Senator Joyce, you may take your seat. Proceed. Matthew, take your seat as well. Honorable senators are aware that at the sitting of the Senate held on Thursday, 27 June 2023, the Senate resolved to establish an ad hoc committee to investigate the compensation to the Kenyan victims of the 1998 bombing of the United States of America Embassy in Nairobi and report back to the House within 3 months of its establishment, realizing that the extension period of 45 days of the tenure of the ad hoc committee lapsed on 10th November 2023, yet the committee has a lot of ad hoc committee for a further period of 100 days from 10th November 2023 to enable the committee to finalize and table its report in the Senate on or before 18th of February 2024. Honorable members, will as many as of that opinion say aye? Aye. Will as many as of a contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it. Clerk, you may call the next order.
Order number 8, motion, debate on the President's address to Parliament, second day.
Honorable members, I believe there was no one who was left out in the last session unless right, I am notified that Senator Ali Roba had concluded on his debate on the speech, and I will invite Senator Cherargei Samson to proceed from there.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir, for this opportunity. From the onset, I want to thank you for fast-tracking the House business despite the earlier hiccups. And you know, I don't have a doubt in your ability, because when things were thick, you represented me in court those days when we were in trenches of fighting to ensure Kenya Kwanza wins. And out of my blessings, you went on and become the senator of Bomet. So, Mr. Speaker, another issue I wanted to bring to the attention of the House, I know there will be proper communication, is I want to thank the courts of law. Courts of law, I don't know what is wrong. Is it the blessings or you becoming the senator?
Point of order from Senator Kinyua.
Mr. Speaker, I listened to the most sought lawyer in town, Senator Cherargei, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, does he insinuate, because Senator Yusuf Haji, who is also, who sits in the Speaker's panel, because he did not represent him when he was in trenches, is not a good speaker, Mr. Speaker?
Well, what's your point of order, Senator Boni?
Mr. Speaker, did you hear the senator of Nandi say that without his blessings, you would not be here today? Mr. Speaker, not using exactly the same words, but words to that effect. Mr. Speaker, I know him as a distinguished senator, an outstanding legal mind, but with no religious... Mr. Speaker, can a man who has no track record of even preaching once, even to a Sunday school, have the capacity to bless the distinguished senator of Bomet?
Senator Cherargei, you may clarify the point of order by Senator Kinyua in terms of the insinuation that you made as well as the comments and the point of intervention by Senator Halwale. Senator Chiptumo, just hold, let's deal with that bit
Mr.
first.
Speaker, I said it's one of the blessings. Some of the people who gave you blessings. Number two, I'm not saying other panelists. Yes, and other panelists are good people, even the substantive speaker. And Mr. Speaker, as you are aware, in our Kalenjin community, I come from the Nandi where Koitalel Samoy was there. You remember when we took President William Ruto for blessings by the Koitalel and Tala elders, his roads were open and he's now the 5th president of the Republic of Kenya. So, Mr. Speaker, with those many remarks, I hope my time is frozen.
Yes.
Mr. Speaker, you know, I don't know whether it will still be relevant because I heard my colleague here referring to a member here as Yusuf Haji. Do we have a senator by that name, Mr. Speaker?
I let that pass. Cherargei, proceed.
He's the son of our former senator, but he's now Senator Abdullaji. So, Speaker, secondly, I want to bring to the attention of the House as I debate this, that one of the hallmarks in this House is where we amended the standing orders to allow cabinet secretaries to appear, and we sat in parliamentary group, and we had the blessings of the president. I'm happy, and I want to congratulate courts of law. They have dismissed a petition of our colleagues in the minority side, the Azimio senators, as lacking merit. And I am happy that finally they have come back to the House, because whenever we question the cabinet secretaries, our colleagues in the minority side have not been able to attend because they had a petition in court. I'm happy that matter is settled, and the courts dismissed the petition that it does not have merit. So I hope we shall not be taking matters to court that are frivolous or do not have a merit. Mr. Speaker, I want to thank the President, because as per the tradition and Constitution, Mr. Speaker, the President has done tremendously well. Despite the challenges, Mr. Speaker, you know the economy was in ICU, Mr. Speaker, because of many challenges. All of us know that the public debt is way above 10 trillion Kenyan shillings. We know there was issues of extrajudicial killings, which the President came and stopped. We know there were many challenges that were economically, Mr. Speaker, that were unfortunate. But I'm happy, Mr. Speaker, you know, in people who deal with the business, the fact that there is going concern and you are able to pay your credit, you are doing very well. Kenya has not defaulted in terms of payment of the credit and loans internationally, Mr. Speaker. And I know the change on the Speaker's seat. Mr. Speaker, and therefore it is very important that a House we must give, because where our economy was, Mr. Speaker, is at the cliff where we call near Kisumu, Shao Morobi, where it was almost going down the cliff, Mr. Speaker, in a place called Shao Morobi, where when old men and women, Mr. Speaker, in my community, so that the people can get the context, is after getting very old, they would used to say, death has forgotten us. So they used to go to a place in Nandi called Shao Morobi and throw themselves down, so that because they had realized they had gotten too old until death had forgotten. So that is the stage where economy had reached. Number two, I want to thank the President, because we demand the independence of judiciary. I'm happy there has been additional 3 billion that has been given to judiciary, Mr. Speaker. This is important. What we demand of judiciary is independent, fairness, firmness, and transparency, Mr. Speaker. We don't want to see justice being sold like njugu and sweets on the street, Mr. Speaker. We want to see the Chief Justice, Martha Koome, and other judges. Mr. Speaker, you know, in this country, we risk reducing justice to the highest bidder. And it is very unfortunate. I want to challenge, because, Mr. Speaker, judiciary should not be a bastion or a dent of corruption, where court orders, Mr. Speaker, are being issued like tissue papers on the streets, Mr. Speaker. We must, as a country, if we give more resources, Mr. Speaker, to judiciary, they must stand with the truth and justice. Just the way our holy books, Quran and the Bible and other religious books talk of, Mr. Speaker. So we need judiciary to be held accountable, Mr. Speaker. They must be. We need judiciary, Mr. Speaker, to push for justice of the local people. Mr. Speaker, how do you explain there are cases that are in judiciary? I know we have backlog of cases around 500,000 cases every year being filed by Kenyans, Mr. Speaker. But how can Chief Justice Martha Koome and judiciary explain to the country, Mr. Speaker? And in fact, in future, we should be calling state of address of judiciary, because it's an independent arm of government, to tell us what they are doing, Mr. Speaker. Because how do you have a court case which is 10 years, 5 years old? Some of them are succession matters that can be determined on a matter of technicality and procedure, Mr. Speaker. So in as much as there is goodwill from the President, the Judicial Service Commission also must rein on rogue judicial officers. Mr. Speaker, I've been the biggest defender of judiciary. In fact, I brought a statement when Salaries and Remuneration Commission wanted to reduce the salaries and emoluments of judiciary, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, they didn't, I am a supporter of judiciary, but we must call out corruption in judiciary, Mr. Speaker. And I like Ahmed Nasir Abdullahi, Mr. Speaker, senior counsel, who has been consistent in calling out judiciary corruption. And we don't need to institutionalize corruption, Mr. Speaker. Those judges who had been caught participating in corruption, and magistrates and judicial officers, they must be fired. Not only fired, they must be subjected to judicial process so that we get rid and clean judiciary, Mr. Speaker, so that we don't see ending. And Mr. Speaker, and I think addition to that, Mr. Speaker, the other issue is the issue of farmers. I'm happy, Mr. Speaker, and I want to thank the President. Mr. Speaker, when he took over government, the fertilizer cost was 7,000 shillings. In last planting season, we bought at 3,500. Now, Mr. Speaker, we are buying fertilizer to 2,500, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, and this fertilizer will be given to farmers of maize, farmers of tea, coffee, sugarcane, and all the farmers, this subsidized fertilizer, through the National Cereals and Produce Board. I want to thank the Minister of Agriculture, Senator Mithika Linturi, for spearheading distribution of subsidized fertilizer, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, my only challenge, I don't know other counties, but in Nandi, you know, Nandi, we are at autopilot. The management of county government of Nandi is autopilot. Because in Nandi, after getting the subsidy program, I expected the Nandi county governor and the county government, Mr. Sang, to do what we call last mile distribution of fertilizer. So that the fertilizer, they don't need to go to Lesos NCPP depot, or Mosoriat NCPP depot, or Celia NCPP depot, or Kobuja NCPP depot. So, Speaker, we needed county government of Nandi to do what we call last mile distribution of fertilizer, so that it becomes easy for farmers and save transport costs, noting that the cost of fuel is quite high, Mr. Speaker. So, and I want to thank the President. We now have dryers, maize dryers now. I want to inform farmers from where we come across the country, because we harvested when it was raining, Mr. Speaker, and to avoid the issue of aflatoxin, the dryers have been provided at 70 shillings from 300 shillings per bag, Mr. Speaker. There are mobile dryers and others, Mr. Speaker. So on the sector of agriculture, Mr. Speaker, finally, I want on the issue of agriculture, I want to thank the President and also the Deputy President, His Excellency Rigathi Gachagua, because he has been reading the reforms in the coffee sector, in the tea sector, Mr. Speaker, and he has been reading reforms in the milk sector, Mr. Speaker. One of the issues of disappointment, Mr. Speaker, and I know the President is watching and government, is we have a problem because 1 liter of milk has fallen down to 32 shillings per liter, Mr. Speaker. We want at least 50 shillings of milk per liter so that farmers can get value. Mr. Speaker, I want to, and in fact, even on the coffee cherry fund, I want to request, and I know His Excellency Rigathi Gachagua on the reforms of coffee sector should ensure through coffee cherry fund, Mr. Speaker, that all counties got it. In the last session, and we sat with you in the last session, we got 10 billion shillings through coffee cherry fund, but Nandi did not get it. Yet we have coffee. I went to Kaberer Farmers Cooperative Society. I went to Kipsele, Mr. Speaker, Kipsele Cooperative Society in Tindred. There are many cooperative societies in Tindred, up to Soba, all over Tindred. Almost the entire of Nandi is growing coffee. We want in this coffee cherry fund, Nandi County to be included, and I want to thank the government for increasing coffee, 1 kilo of coffee, from 20 shillings to 80 shillings. And I want to continue encouraging Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua to continue facing on the coffee and agricultural sector cartels who continue to threaten, Mr. Speaker, our farmers. And he should not fear, he should fear nothing. But Mr. Speaker, as a Christian, they always say, fear those who kill the soul, but don't fear who killed the body, Mr. Speaker. So I hope those reforms that the Deputy President will carry on in the agricultural sector, who has the blessings of the President, we shall be able to get value. Mr. Speaker, another issue is sugarcane. And Senator Eddy should be excited, Mr. Speaker, because the government has waived 117 billion to sugar factories that are owned by government. This will give a new lease of life, Mr. Speaker, to Mumias, to Chemelil, to Nzoia Sugar, all the sugar sector. 117 billion. And most of those regions, Mr. Speaker, are occupied by Azimio supporters. So you can see the President is non-discriminative in giving development across the country, Mr. Speaker. And then 1.07 billion will be paid to farmers of sugarcane. I know the Christmas will come early from the people from those regions, Mr. Speaker. I want to encourage them to use that 1.07 billion being paid to farmers to advance their planting. I don't want to see them adding more wives, adding more children, Mr. Speaker, or buying new toys or new cars or anything, Mr. Speaker, but be used in that aspect, Mr. Speaker. So on the agricultural front, because I just wanted to summarize on the agricultural front, Mr. Speaker, that is very important, and as farmers, we are very grateful to what they plan. And for us, Mr. Speaker, I want to encourage, even on our side, both minority and majority side, please find time to read our manifesto. I've always seen people commenting on issues where they have not read our manifesto. The plan is very clear. It's about the people. And finally, on the implementation on the issue of fishing landing site, Mr. Speaker, we need to ensure that there are fishing landing sites, like in Nyanza and coast regions. These are areas that voted against William Ruto in 2022 general election, Mr. Speaker. But these are the areas that the President has not in any way discriminated in terms of development. As we talk, Nyanza and coastal regions are getting fishing landing site, which shows the President is not discriminative to any region in terms of the... Mr. Speaker, finally on agriculture is on the issue of post-harvest. I want to ask you, when you go to Nyandarua, where our brother comes from, we normally lose, even in my county, Mr. Speaker, we have a lot of milk, what we call milk clot. We don't want to see when there's milk clot or ndengu from Machakos or Gitui, or potatoes from Nyandarua and other areas, or milk from Nandi and other areas. We want to ensure, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, on the issue of Hustler Fund, I want to continue to encourage Kenyans to use this revolutionary for all of us, Mr. Speaker. We must be ready as a country to use the Hustler Fund and be ready to ensure saving. Mr. Speaker, on the issue of NHIF, we agree with the President that the reforms in the NHIF sector or universal health coverage should be taken at top notch. I want to thank President for community health promoters, so that, you know, Mr. Speaker, apart from food, the next highest spending item of any family is on the issue of health care. Mr. Speaker, I want to thank, because now you'll have a health promoter coming to your house. They ensure they PMI you. They ensure, Mr. Speaker, so that you are able, Mr. Speaker, to live a good life, Mr. Speaker. And there is a song reggae talks about, there is, I think, a famous singer, I'm forgetting the name, his song about imagine if things were this good. That's a reggae song, Mr. Speaker. For those people who like listening to the reggae, Mr. Speaker, they can agree that imagine good things will be with Kenya Kwanza government led by William Ruto, Mr. Speaker. And transforming education, Mr. Speaker, because I can see my time is up. Let us continue transforming education. We want to see CBC programs being quickly addressed, Mr. Speaker. The digitization of government, finally, I want to thank Professor Kithure Kindiki, and for the comfort of the House, the Ministry of Interior, led by Professor Kithure Kindiki, has revoked licenses on the issue of charges on IDs, birth certificates, death certificates. People who are coming, when you go and get married outside the country, come with your children, Mr. Speaker. These things have continued to be reviewed, Mr. Speaker, going into the future. So I want to thank the Ministry of Interior for revoking that Gazette notice, so that the ordinary Kenyans can get services at affordable rate, Mr. Speaker. And you know, Mr. Speaker, you cannot levy tax without public participation and without parliamentary approval. I agree with Professor Kithure Kindiki that public participation should be done going into the future. Mr. Speaker, I want to ask Kenyans to give time to President William Ruto. In the next 1 year, this country will be a land, will be like Canaan, land of honey and milk, where every Kenyan will be able to afford a decent meal, where every Kenyan will be able to take their children to school, where every Kenyan will go, Mr. Speaker. Finally, I want to appeal to cabinet secretaries and senior government officials. Let them stop doing politics. The president has given them opportunity to serve the nation. Let them serve the nation. Politics for politicians. If you are a cabinet secretary, if you are a senior civil servant, stick to your lane and deliver. If you are given to do roads, do roads. Don't go and launch footballs in some funny areas, Mr. Speaker. So I want to challenge the cabinet secretaries and senior government officials, assist the president in delivering this agenda going into the future, Mr. Speaker, so that as a country, we can be able to move forward. Because the president has given us the direction, Mr. Speaker, so that we are given a certain direction, Mr. Speaker. We don't want to sing the song, I think it was by Lucky Dube. When you look outside the window, do you see anything to smile about? We don't want to listen to that song. We want, when you look outside the window, to paraphrase the reggae song, Mr. Speaker, you see everything to smile about. Mr. Speaker, I congratulate the president and I support the motion.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Eddie Okech.
Don't start interruptions here. Mr. Speaker, it is with really a lot of humility that I even get a chance to, just comment, pass a few comments on the president's speech, which is a requirement of him under the Constitution, Article 132 of our Constitution. I think this will be the second time that we as a House are reflecting on the speech of the president. And Mr. Speaker, we cannot reflect on this speech without recognizing that the first speech was a promise speech, so that when the president was going to address the country in the second speech, then it goes without saying that it was a scorecard on the things that the president did promise on, which I am glad that the Senator of Nandi has actually encapsulated that as an issue of the manifesto. And Mr. Speaker, that manifesto had very specific, very specific milestones and agenda that was sold to this nation, which was reiterated when the president gave his first speech to Parliament. I'm glad to see that in line 7 of his speech, Mr. Speaker, the president started attempting to give the nation apology for not being able to meet those promises. Because in that line, Mr. Speaker, the president gives a very clear excuse of why these particular issues have not been met. He says in his own mouth that in our plan, we identified 3 primary challenges: external shocks, physical distress, and structural imbalances that heavily strained our economy, causing nationwide difficulty. And this becomes the excuse, the mischief of excuse, so that he can be able to indicate to the country why the country is experiencing an almost economic meltdown. And it's surprising, Mr. Speaker, when every speaker who has stood before this House, including some of the departmental heads, Mr. Speaker, stand and they've got all different reasons as to why the economy is not working. Senator Cherargei has stood here and also intimated some of them. Yesterday I saw here, Mr. Speaker, when the whip was moving this motion, saying very well that the reason as to why the dollar has gone higher is because Americans, the American citizens, were given dollars so that they could keep. I mean, Mr. Speaker, as that was happening in this House, Mr. Speaker, in the other House, the central bank governor was appearing in that House. Ask the same question. They are working for the same government. Ask the same question. The central bank governor said that the reason why the dollar is struggling, Mr. Speaker, is because there are no tourists coming to Kenya. So we have got 3 different people in the same government not understanding why we as a country are having a problem with the dollar. And Mr. Speaker, this kind of confusion in this regime that also reflects on the president's speech is an important one to assess, because in every single bit of the promises that the president gave, There is different numbers, different excuses that are not in line with what Kenyans are speaking. Let me start with the speaker with the issue of education. Mr. Speaker, as the president was reaffirming his commitment to education, as we speak right now, Mr. Speaker, our kids in university, the students in the universities, in nearly all the universities, haven't received their money in help, and even if it was a grant, they haven't received them to an extent that children from Nandi are sleeping in verandas without even food. Mr. Speaker, if you look at the issue of secondary school education, Mr. Speaker.
One moment, Eddie. What is your point of order, Senator Cherargei?
You know, Mr. Speaker, Senator Eddie should have learned standing order number 105 on responsibility of facts. Higher Education's loan board was released 2 weeks ago. Is it in order, Mr. Speaker, with tremendous respect to my young brother, to mislead the country that money meant for Higher Education's loan board has been released, Mr. Speaker? And if he has a contrary to that, he should substantiate and table that information before the House. Because it might be good to make quick political gains, but it's not convenient to lie to the House, Mr. Speaker. Is it in order not lie, but mislead the House, Mr. Speaker?
Senator Eddie, are you able to substantiate the information on help?
Mr. Speaker, I think I've got a responsibility to always bring facts to this House, and also have a responsibility to educate lawyers who do not know numbers. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, you give me until the end of the week, I'll fashion this House with that data, because I'll be talking about so much data here that Cherargei might collapse hearing data, because he doesn't understand these numbers. Senator Cherargei, and I want to tell Senator Cherargei through you, Mr. Speaker, that when he was speaking, I was listening. Sometimes we were given one mouth and 2 ears so that we listen more. And I listened to these numbers, so let him digest the numbers. If they are contrary, I'll wish him the courage to also be in touch with everything that's happening. Because, Mr. Speaker, for instance, I was going to the issue of the secondary school education, Mr. Speaker. When President Uhuru Kenyatta left this country, Mr. Speaker, the capitation for secondary school education was such that the cost of tuition was 22,000. And by the time the president was leaving, everybody was getting their money. Today, in our economy, Mr. Speaker, we have 4 million students who are secondary school students. He knows very well that the president, for capitation, has only released 65 billion. If you are to divide that by 4 million students, then it means that the students today are only getting 16 billion. That means that every single parent has to pay 6,000 more on that capitation gap that we have. It's a problem, Mr. Speaker, and our children are suffering. Mr. Speaker, the JSS that has been brought today, 95% of the schools that we have in our country, Mr. Speaker, do not have money for infrastructural improvement that can be able to meet the demand of JSS, Mr. Speaker. While parents are struggling to pay for capitation gaps in this country, Mr. Speaker, the same parents are forced, Mr. Speaker, to fundraise to be able to buy desks, to fundraise to be able to build classrooms, to fundraise to buy books for their children, to fundraise, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Eddie, there is a point of order from Senator Cherargei.
I'm coming back for you. I'm not done with you,
Mr. Speaker, do you listen to the senator threatening the House? Mr. Speaker, Senator Standing Order 105, Mr. Speaker, on responsibility of fact again. That is why I want to advise Eddie to also be listening more and talking less. Because the area member of parliament where he comes from, under the JSS program, the CDF, the work of the CDF is to improve school infrastructure. And even through, and it is a common knowledge. I thought these are basic things that he should be aware of, Mr. Speaker. Because under the CDF, it is the work of the CDF to improve and develop infrastructure that we have. So is it in order, under Standing Order 105, Mr. Speaker, to mislead the House and say that the president instead, and you know CDF, Mr. Speaker, is given to all legislators, both on the minority and majority side. Unless there are MPs in Migori or where he comes from, which constituency do you come from, Senator Eddie? You should share with the House, Mr. Speaker. It's the infrastructure improvement should be done by CDF, Mr. Speaker. And I'm always willing to mentor him and guide him where he gets the way wrong.
Senator Eddy, I presume you stand guided by Senator Cherogei's statement.
Mr. Speaker, I think that is also in order to sometimes also refer to Standing Order number 126 on what constitutes a frivolous point of order, Mr. Speaker. Because I think Senator Cherogei is just concerned that this factor might be putting his some serious high pedestal on the president, and therefore he wants just to come with any point of order. Mr. Speaker, the way CDF works in this country, the CDF has always been limited. Okay, even right now, Mr. Speaker, the highest a member is getting on CDF is 145 million, Mr. Speaker. With the kind of budget that had been pushed forward to be given to JSS, Mr. Speaker, it is actually about 65%, gap that needs to be put on GSS, Mr. Speaker, which is why, Mr. Speaker, we are trying to advise that.
Senator Methu, what is your point of order?
Thank you very much.
I hope you're holding my time, Mr. Speaker, because this part of the government is now becoming very notorious on this point of order. And they can help the country.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I would not have wanted to interrupt my good friend, Senator Eddy, and because this is a house of record, and me and him are new senators, so we are learning, I think it is fair to say that he has quoted a standing order that what he has said and what is in the standing orders is different. He has quoted standing order 126 that constitutes a frivolous standing order, and what is in 126 is action to be taken on refusal to withdraw. It has nothing to do with a frivolous standing order, point of order. So for purposes of his knowledge, he can read and quote the right point of order.
Mr. Speaker, there is something called a slip of the tongue. The standing order that I meant was 121 on false standing orders. And I'm glad that the senator who has brought it up is the senator who has also struggled with the slip of tongue all the time. Catching up with English has been very difficult, but now he has acclimatized to the language of the Queen in the House. Mr. Speaker, I wanted to also talk about the issue of borrowing, and Mr. Speaker, I hope you're holding my time, because this point of order have been so many. Mr. Speaker, the President talked about the issue of borrowing, and the way he's struggling with the issue of borrowing, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Bonikalwale, what is your point of order?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, standing order number 105 demands that members must take responsibility for the factuality of their statements. On Friday, Mr. Speaker, the PS released 16.9 billion shillings, being money for capitation. Mr. Speaker, this is part of the 89.4 billion shillings, money set aside by the government to address the issue of capitation. The Senator for Nandi has correctly informed the Senator of Migori that CDF has the responsibility to help in upgrading the classrooms. And I put it further to him, Mr. Speaker, sir, that the policy of the President and his government is that CDF creates a partnership with the ministry to address the issue of JSSS. Is he in order to mislead the country and incite members of the unsuspecting members of the public that this government is not able to roll out CBC? When the facts are there, I've told you 89.4. Friday, 16.9 was released. Every member of parliament, not 135, but up to 170 million shillings per constituency. Even if you don't like President Ruto, at least give him credit for what he has done. If you must campaign using facts, then use the correct facts. Is he in order, Mr. Speaker? Can he withdraw and apologize? Failing which, can he then substantiate by tabling alternative figures?
Senator Eddy, what will it be? Are you going to substantiate or correct your statement or and your data?
Mr. Speaker, the senator for Kakamega was almost lynched in Malinya Market, where his own mother buys sugar in that market because of the students that are struggling in that area. Mr. Speaker, I'm still responding to this point of order. Just be patient. Mr. Speaker, can I respond to this point of order? Mr. Speaker, and it's not me who said, the senator for Kakamega said it on this floor.
One moment. What's your point of order?
But Mr. Speaker, I just one point of order.
You're going to standing order,
Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker, standing order number 93, or is it, sorry, 98, a point of order is not a privilege. It is a right in our standing orders for the information. Standing order 103 and 105 and 110, Mr. Speaker, it is not good, and in order to disparage the name of the good senator. Senator Boni Khalwale is a senior politician in this country. Yes. The time he has had in politics is more than your age, Senator Eddy, with all due respect. Mr. Speaker, is it in order? Is it in order? I'm asking my standing, Mr. Speaker, is it in order for the good senator of Migori to disparage the good name of Senator Khalwale? Yet we know in Malinya, the Senator Khalwale enjoys the status of godly-like. In that village, Mr. Speaker, is it in order to say he was lynched? And Mr. Speaker, finally, can he provide an OB to show that that matter was reported in a police station, to show that Senator Khalwale was almost lynched, because that's a serious issue? Can he bring an OB number?
Senator Cherargei.
Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker.
Let us give Eddy to give his submissions.
No, I know Mr. Cherargei is trying to help the president by deconstructing my thought processes, but he should also not bring his, Mr. Speaker, the word ignorance is not any bad word to use when somebody doesn't know something.
Senator Eddy, if I may guide you, please clarify on the issue of capitation.
I will, Mr. Speaker, but
directed by
my character has been assassinated here, Mr. Speaker, because when I talked about the issue of heckling and almost the lynching scenario in Malinya, it is not me who said. It is Senator Boni Khalwale who stood in front of this house yesterday and said it. It's not me who said. So it is upon the Senator of Nandi to make sure that he is a responsible member who comes to this house and listens to what people say. And in fact, I empathize with Senator Boni Khalwale because he was echoed for the first time. He's a fine leader, but he was echoed on the basis that the economic times are hard in this country. He accepted it. And Mr. Speaker, on the issue of capitation, he who alleges, Mr. Speaker, the lawyers in the house will tell you, has got the fundamental responsibility to also be able to give us his evidence. You cannot question my facts and saying that my facts should be tabled in the house, and then you give a counterfacts which haven't tabled in the house. If you feel that my facts are wrong, bring your facts in the house so that we look them against my facts. So, Mr. Speaker, I will bring my facts. I've also stated. So I'll bring my facts in the house and then allow Boni also, Mr. Speaker, I want to make a ruling on this, that Senator Boni Khalwale must also bring his facts against my facts in this house. Mr. Speaker, I was talking about the issue of borrowing, and I hope that my time now starts at 15 minutes that I still have. Mr. Speaker, no, because you have been interrupting me, you don't want to listen to the truth. Mr. Speaker, the president talked very squarely about the issue of borrowing, which has been a serious burden to this house and to the nation.
Senator
and Mr. Speaker,
let's allow Senator Eddy to be heard in silence.
Mr. Speaker,
let's hear him first.
Protect me.
What is your point of order?
Mr. Speaker, protect me.
Otherwise, Mr. Speaker, Under Standing Order number 98, a point of order, I want to insist is a right and is part of the standing orders. Mr. Speaker, have you heard saying he who alleges must prove? In the standard of criminal probabilities, you prove beyond reasonable doubt. In standard of civil is based on probabilities, Mr. Speaker. Is it in order for Senator Eddy to misdirect your ruling where you had ruled that he should be the one to substantiate? Now he's moving pattern of substantiating to Senator Kalwale, Mr. Speaker. Is he challenging your ruling, Mr. Speaker? Is it in order to revise your ruling? Does our standing orders and constitution allow us to challenge the Speaker's ruling, yet you have told him to come and substantiate? It's not about Senator Kalwale. Is it
Very
in order,
well.
Mr. Speaker, sir?
Very well, Senator Cherugei. Senator Eddy, you may proceed, but I think you did mention that you're going to substantiate your information and data next week, on Tuesday?
Yes, Mr. Speaker.
Tuesday next week. Thank you.
Thank you. Are you happy now? Okay. Now, happily listen to my submissions here. Mr. Speaker, the President talked about borrowing in this country, Mr. Speaker. When President Uhuru Kenyatta left this country, Mr. Speaker, the commercial borrowing interest rate was averaging 14%. As he was doing his submission, Mr. Speaker, last week, the government had issued institutional bonds at 17%. If you issue infrastructure bond at 17%, Mr. Speaker, there is no way commercial banks will de-risk their capital in this country by giving anything under, Mr. Speaker. Such that this has forced our economy right now that if the banks were to give any loans to any of these small businesses that the government really wants to help, it is now averaging 24%, Mr. Speaker. This is now leading to serious crowding out of businesses. Businesses cannot get a chance to grow, Mr. Speaker, because of this same kind of heavy borrowing we are seeing, Mr. Speaker. When BPS was moved earlier sometimes this year, Mr. Speaker, the deficit that we had as a country, Mr. Speaker, was 700 billion. And I know this because we sit with the senior senator of Kakamega, Boni Alwale, and together with him, we did criticize, Mr. Speaker, my time is still not, you're protecting me on the time. Mr. Speaker, we did criticize the issue of high deficit. As we speak right now, Mr. Speaker, the president has borrowed 1.2 trillion, way above the deficit of this country, Mr. Speaker. Then you again stand before the House and say you are going to deal with crowding out. This kind of juxtaposition of a statement from the president, Mr. Speaker, is worrisome. Mr. Speaker, the president talked about the issue of subsidy, which is consistent to the claim that the president had made in the beginning of the year that it is very important that the country subsidizes production and not consumption, Mr. Speaker. And the issue of fertilizer, Mr. Speaker.
What is your point of order, Boni Kalwale?
I'm sorry to appear like I'm interrupting the distinguished senator. Mr. Speaker, he is alleging that the president has borrowed 1.2 trillion shillings. Trillion. He's an economist and he knows what it means by 1.2 trillion. Would he please help this house, carry the public by tabling here evidence showing the 1.2 trillion shillings that the president has borrowed. You can't make here sweeping populist statements that suit the opposition politics as if President William Ruto is an irresponsible leader. When he spoke to this issue, it was clear he only limited himself to the fact that the Eurobond, which was 2 billion shillings, he was going to repay next month at 300 million shillings. So if Eurobond was 2 billion, and he has not talked about any bond, Eurobond, China bond, or whatever bond, was 2 billion, about 1.2 trillion. If you must lie, lie with facts. Lie reasonably. Lie with a degree of intelligence.
Point of order on who? Senator Muma.
Honorable Speaker, allow me to raise a point of order on the process that's going on. Mr. Speaker, I feel the use of point of orders to disrupt needs to be ruled upon. Mr. Speaker, there are members in this House who are actually, through the point of order, violating Standing Order number 97, getting to speak more than once on this issue by calling on points of orders and then proceeding to seem to discuss on issues that people have raised. Mr. Speaker, we need to stop that.
Senator Muma, the point of order that you've cited says no senator shall speak more than once to a question. It does not refer to more than once in a point of order. Point of order, any senator may raise a point of order at any time during a member's speech. So your point of order does not stand. Senator Eddy, there's the issue that Senator Boni Kalwale has raised in proving substantiating the fact that the president has borrowed 1.2 trillion. Can you respond to that and let us know if you're able to substantiate it, and will you table it with the other data?
Mr. Speaker, a senior member of this House questioning my facts, and in questioning my facts, goes ahead and says that this country has got a Eurobond worth 2 billion, and then is challenging me to prove numbers. Seriously, Mr. Speaker? Seriously? That Honorable Boni Kalwale, Senator of Kakamega,
yes,
Mr. Speaker, even before the point of order, Mr. Speaker, there is another point of order. Was this a strategy from the government side so that they can run away from my facts and from telling them what Kenyans are feeling today?
Senator,
you know,
Senator Eddy. Order, Senator Eddy. Senator Eddy, order. Eddy. What's your point of order, Senator Cheptumo?
So, Speaker, you know I rarely interrupt members. I only do so when it is absolutely necessary. Mr. Speaker, you gave some directions, very clear, for Senator Fomikori to be able to explain his position. Instead of doing so, Mr. Speaker, is again going ahead to look like challenging your decision. Mr. Speaker, I think it is only fair. This is a house of rules, of order, of record. Whoever alleges, Mr. Speaker, and I think that is what Honorable Kalwale was talking to, that proves that what you are talking about, you have the facts. And Mr. Speaker, I think already you've told him to be able to, he is able to do that, I think next week or something, from the other issues you have raised. If he doesn't have the facts now, he can be given time. But Mr. Speaker, we are losing time. I want to speak to this motion and many other members, Mr. Speaker. I think, Mr. Speaker, as much as we have that right under the standing orders, I think also we should spend our time optimally so that we move forward. But my colleague here should be able, Mr. Speaker, to explain his position, not only alleging, but able to prove what he's saying.
Senator Cheptumo, I think if you had given him time, he would have probably responded. He was just making his introductory remarks. So let us give him time, and we see if he's going to substantiate or not. Senator Eddy.
Mr. Speaker, where Senator Boni Kalwale feels like my fact is wrong against his facts, I promise that next week I will avail it in the House. Is that satisfactory? So that you can rule on this, so I can finish my presentation. Mr. Speaker, Mr. President did talk very heavily on the issue of farm input. That's what I was talking about, Mr. Speaker. And the concept has always been that, and the argument has always been that you subsidize production and not consumption, Mr. Speaker, which is probably a brilliant concept. But Mr. Speaker, the reality is this. When you say that you have subsidized fertilizer such that fertilizer prices have come from 6,500 to 2,500, which is a fact. Mr. Speaker, I have called everywhere in Migori County. There is nowhere that fertilizer goes for 2,500. And I'll tell you the reason why, Bonnie. Number two, Mr. Speaker, we had Senator Mashinani in Turkana. When you go to Turkana, we went to a place called Kitili in irrigation mine, in irrigation farms. There is nowhere among those farmers are getting fertilizer for 2,500. And the reason is very simple, Bonnie. When you decide to say that you're subsidizing fertilizer, and constantly the cost of petrol and fuel keeps on going higher, the other inputs get affected, including the cost of vehicles that are supposed to go to a place like Lokicha to take that fertilizer down there. That is why there is an increased price of fertilizers, despite the fact that you claim subsidy, Mr. Speaker. And in any case, fertilizer is not the only subsidized input that the country needs, Mr. Speaker. The people from the lake where I come from, the people of Migori, the people of Siaya, the people of Homa Bay, are serious fish farmers, Mr. Speaker. When you put something like cost of fuel to be very high, it affects them directly, Mr. Speaker. As we speak now, Mr. Speaker, the shilling is extremely performing poorly against other currencies, Mr. Speaker. As we speak right now, Mr. Speaker, Uganda has just decided to buy its oil directly and not through Kenya, Mr. Speaker. When Uhuru Kenyatta was leaving, Mr. Speaker, the Kenya shillings was trading at 32 shillings against the Ugandan shillings. Right now, it is 25 shillings, Mr. Speaker. The Tanzanian shillings is now stronger than it was when Uhuru Kenyatta was leaving, Mr. Speaker. And in any case, Bonnie Alole wants to know that the people who grow tea in this country, today the auctioning of tea has now shifted to Tanzania instead of what was happening in Mombasa. Mr. Speaker, the economy is doing bad. And for the purposes of the one man who believes in God, President Ruto, and his troops like Senator Boni Alwale, the book of John, chapter 21, verse 3, says that when Jesus Christ had been arrested, crucified, and died, his disciples felt broken. They felt broken because they had nothing to do, nothing else to do. They went back to fish. And in the third day when Jesus arose from the dead, he came back and told them, when you are most broken, that is when God is near you. The people of Kenya today, we are telling you, Ruto has broken our spirits. Ruto has broken the future of our children. President Ruto has broken the hopes and the dreams of our people. And I can tell you that even if he insists through these speeches and these frivolous point of orders, Mr. Speaker, the country will move forward because now as a people, our hands is in our Lord Jesus Christ.
Senator
Our hands
Cheptumo.
is in the hand of God.
Eddie, Senator Cheptumo, what's your point of order?
Mr. Speaker, is the member really debating this statement? He is converting, Mr. Speaker, this House to a political rally. Mr. Speaker, this statement is a clear expression of the plans that the head of state has for this country. And Mr. Speaker, for the member to appear to dismiss every proposal, every statement in this statement, Mr. Speaker, is unfair, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, this is a house of debate. Let us be objective in our discussion, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I think my colleague is overstepping his Mr. Speaker, because
Senator Cheptumo,
he is attacking the person of the president, Mr. Speaker.
What standing order are you standing
Mr. Speaker,
on?
I've said what I've said.
Senator Mungatana, what's your point of order?
Speaker, I'm standing on standing order number 105. I'm asking the honorable senator from Migori, who is a very good and upcoming senator. When he generalizes and says Ruto has, first of all, is it the president or who is he talking about? When he says He has broken this dream of the child, this dream of the... Is it in order, Mr. Speaker, to make such sweeping allegations without a substantive, first of all, discussing the head of state substantive motion? Secondly, Mr. Speaker, to say that you have broken a dream, you have to give us the specific dream that has been broken, Mr. Speaker. What was the dream of the fisherman that you said? Was he expecting to get 10 kilograms or what? And how was that dream broken? How is Ruto in it? Mr. Speaker, I think the Honorable Senator from Migori must, tone down, come to the mode of debate and move away from the politics so that we can hear, because we actually want to encourage you in your growth, by the way, Senator Eddie. We have a lot of respect for you. But don't veer off into the politics. Stick to the issue so that we can hear you, Mr. Speaker. Is he in order?
Senator Eddie, when you were making your submission, you referred to Ruto. Is your point against Ruto as a person or Ruto the president? Because you do not refer to him as the president.
Mr. Speaker, I did refer to President Ruto, and I'm addressing the presidential speech. Is that okay? Can I conclude?
On the point of order raised by Senator Mungatana, although I'm not sure if it actually needs substantiating. But I think at this point I will allow you to finish your submission.
Mr. Speaker,
you only have 2 minutes.
I have no problem responding to this in the context of this speech. The speech includes the president's investment on what we call ASLA funds. The reason why I say there are broken dreams that are suffering today, Mr. Speaker, for you to qualify for ASLA fund as a border person, you can only get up to 1,000 bob. And for you to qualify for bigger chunks of money, Mr. Speaker, for borders in this country, for even them to get 4,000, it takes them about an average of 7 months to qualify for that. As I speak to you, Senator of Tana River, the borders when Uhuru Kenyatta was living here, was living office, TVS model of border that is commonly used in this country was going for 128,000 Kenya shillings. Right now, it is going for 168,000 Kenya shillings in the market. Go and check. Now, for borders to be able to get that border, they are required to give 20,000 to Watu Credit, and then another 40,000 for processing of different things. The remaining is all debt. That means that border needs a debt of 150,000, my brother, Senator Mungatana. If in ASLA fund, this border person can only borrow 1,000, how is this person's dream possible? It's not possible.
Your time is up. Your time is up. We added your time. We did. We've been stopping your clock, and I actually added you 1 more minute. Okay, 2 minutes to conclude.
So 2 minutes to conclude, yeah. So what I was saying, my brothers and sisters, is that even hustler funds today, the biggest borrowing place for hustlers in this country is no longer the hustler fund. It is the Mutua kiosk, because in the morning, they have to borrow to consume. They go in the morning to borrow for mayai. They go in the morning to borrow and write in that book, mama wa kiosk, give me sugar, give me maziwa. You see, this is the endless problem that we have. If you're going to have a hustler fund, make it possible for people to borrow for assets that can allow them to do business. And lastly, Mr. Speaker, we have got what I would call personally housing tax. Mr. Speaker, for these hustlers, our mothers in the villages, our people in Kibera, our people in Madari, for them, their pension scheme has never been the issue of being able to keep on putting money so that they buy houses. Their pension scheme is their children. These mothers and these men always educate their children so that when their children get education, they can buy them a house. In fact, there are a number of people in this house who today are buying their parents' houses, including me. I'm building my father's house today. If you make it impossible for me to do business in this country, impossible for me to borrow, impossible for me to survive, I cannot be able to take my kid to school as a mother in Kibera. I cannot be able to take my kid to school as a person in Madare. You make it impossible for me to dream. You make it impossible for me to have hope in this country. Please go back to the basics that you promised on the hustler economy and make it possible for hustlers to thrive in this country. Otherwise, we continue talking about these big dreams, and the president continues using 500 million for travels everywhere, money that could be used to give hustlers to buy borders, money that could be used to give hustlers to buy kokoteni, money that could be used to give hustlers money to be able to buy washing machines and be able to build their dreams.
What is your point of order, Senator Mungatana?
Is the honorable senator from Migori in order to insinuate that President Ruto is spending 500 million on travels when we went to Kirwa in what the place is called, in Kwale, Ukwiru in Kwale. And because of the negotiations that were done, the whole project of electrification was 1.2 billion, Mr. Speaker, and the government of Kenya only contributed 56 million. Is he in order to say that usage of these travels is a waste of money? Is he in order to insinuate that? He can't answer, his time is over, Mr. Speaker.
No, Senator Eddy, you don't have to answer. That is your opinion. You might take a seat. Senator Wamatinga Wahome.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, sir. Indeed, we did listen to the presidential speech. It is quite astonishing, Mr. Speaker, that some senators who were supposed to have sat there and listened to the presidential speech, it's either their ears had taken leave or they are suffering from a selective amnesia. Mr. Speaker, sir, the president did pronounce himself quite clearly that the Hustler Fund is being stocked up so that we can even move to asset financing. Mr. Speaker, sir, the president gave an example of a tuk-tuk rider in Mombasa, whom he had personally spoken to, and who expressed his desire to have the Hustler Fund modified in a way that it can accommodate asset financing. Mr. Speaker, sir, when you listen to senators here, Mr. Speaker, make comment and allude to the fact that it should move to that direction, it is either, Mr. Speaker, they were not pleasant or they are suffering from selective amnesia. Having said that, Mr. Speaker, sir, it is not lost to us that the president did pronounce himself to the policies, to the measurements, and to the adjustments that have taken place in the agricultural sector. Mr. Speaker, sir, you might hear one senator speak about missing fertilizer, but the problem is, Mr. Speaker, some of these senators speaking here, they never go home, so they will never know what is available at home. Mr. Speaker, sir, we were in Turkana, yes. We went to Katilu Irrigation Project, yes. And we did speak to National Irrigation Authority, and they did indicate, yes, this fertilizer will be made available to the farmers in Turkana. Mr. Speaker, sir, I want to confirm to you that after the structural adjustment programs of the 1980s that ensured that destroyed the agricultural sector in Kenya, the president and his cabinet is on the right path to restoring this. Just the other day, Mr. Speaker, sir, after having toiled for so long to change the plight of coffee farmers, we were able to introduce a pricing and a kind of advance advance of 300 shillings, something that has remained elusive for the last 20 years, Mr. Speaker. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, sir, we have seen that the government, in its effort to reform the coffee sector, the agricultural sector, has not only introduced measures. Mr. Speaker, sir, in the Agricultural Committee in which I sit in, we have 9 bills, Mr. Speaker, 9 bills, all of them concerning reforms in the agricultural sector. Mr. Speaker, sir, what has been lacking in this country is the political goodwill to make changes that will benefit Kenyans. Mr. Speaker, sir, in this regime, and I would want to quote the words of the president, it is possible for us to change the fate of Kenyans and especially the farmers in our lifetime. Mr. Speaker, sir, In just under 1 year, Mr. Speaker, the current regime, the Kenya Kwanza government, has been able to employ over 56,000 teachers, Mr. Speaker, sir. This has never happened in the history of this country. Mr. Speaker, sir, we saw the standardization, the introduction of ICT hubs in all ward levels in this country. Mr. Speaker, sir, it is going to be a major milestone, a major achievement, and it is quite interesting that the President has been able, Mr. Speaker, sir, to ensure that we have a constant and constant design for all the ICTs hub so that we can have uniformity, we can have control of...
Senator Eddy? What is your point of order, Senator Eddy?
Mr. Speaker, I stand under point of order number 105 because I've been following keenly the recruitment of teachers in this country, with the latest being 30,000 recruitments. Is it in order for the senator of Nyeri to mislead this House that the President has employed over 56,000 teachers, Mr. Speaker? And in any case, perhaps it should take the courage of even telling us those 56,000 teachers, Mr. Speaker, which counties are they from? Which tribes are they from? Because when you talk about